Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. And everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. Were the words uttered by Marcus Aurelius more than a couple thousand years ago. Yet, it still remains painstakingly true today. This begs the question, if all of human thought and reason derive from these two senses, how do we know when to trust it to deliver an accurate portrayal of anything? The theme for this year's BIS HCMC TEDx talk just so happens to be through another lens, the idea of looking at the same thing from a different viewpoint. Now, looking at the same thing from a different perspective may not be anything revolutionary, but what truly fascinates me is how the lens that we are born and brought up in continues to affect the way we think, even without us being aware of it. Going by Marcus Aurelius' interpretation, if we cannot trust our own lens to deliver an accurate portrayal of the truth, should we use the lens of others in an effort to piece out the coveted truth? Logically speaking, if a large number of people have experienced the same event, you can rationally conclude that the event has likely occurred. However, what happens when large numbers of people have experienced the same event drastically differently? How do we know who to trust? Can we rely on others to paint the perfect picture? Whose eyes do we have to look through to get an understanding of the actual, so-called real perspective? I went through the exact same dilemma a couple of years ago, and it left me bewildered as to how two groups of people could have such different interpretations on the same event. Years before moving to Vietnam, I visited the Vietnam Veterans War Museum in the capital of the United States of America. The museum told a story of American soldiers who tried their absolute best to stem the flow of communism from the North. It portrayed the American soldiers as the heroes who persevered to spread the ideals of democracy. Now, only after moving to Vietnam did I realize that there were people who perceived the war drastically differently. The War Remnants Museum in Ho Chi Minh City painted a completely different picture on what they believed to have truly transpired. It highlighted the Vietnamese struggle to overcome the powerhouse of the United States in their effort to reunify their treasured country. American people referring to a foreign, distant war, known to them as the Vietnam War. Vietnamese people referring to the war with a hint of pride, known to them as the American War. The exact same war, two completely different truths. Now, as someone who has grown up in multiple different countries around the world, I have grown to understand the power of diversity and having connections with different cultures, specifically with people who have different beliefs or upbringing to you. However, in today's day and age, with something as powerful as social media within our lives, we have access to millions upon billions of unique perspectives from all over the world. Connectivity that was not possible until very recently. So, if the answer to understanding stories was simply about looking at different perspectives, like I had done with the museums, what is holding us back? Now, different lenses and perspectives are supposed to give you a clearer understanding of what happened. You are expected to piece together your interpretation of the story. Yet, I could not seem to do that. In photography, there is an optical phenomenon known as camera flare. This occurs when too much direct light enters the camera, and thus, the camera is not able to capture anything of value, leaving photographs degraded, reduced, and hazy. The fact of the matter is, sometimes too many lenses or perspectives cannot guarantee clarity over a story, instead clouding it to the point where no perspective is apparent. This led me to believe that maybe a lack of perspectives was not the real issue. Maybe there was something deeper built into me that influenced the way I thought. the way I perceived and interpreted the stories I had seen. Because, after all, it is not the perspectives that influence what we believe. Rather, it is our interpretations of them is what truly shapes what we take from each and every lens. So, instead of different external lenses affecting our perception of the truth, maybe it is the lens that is built into our eyes that truly shapes what we take from what we learn. This made me think about how we process information passed to us by tools such as social media, rather than what we process. The fantastic part about social media as a whole is the diverse range of content that it gives you. How you are exposed to so many ideas and perspectives that you would usually never be around. However, as we all know, social media does not give you information randomly. Rather, it gives you information based on your viewing habits, based on what you have seen and liked before. In other words, the purpose of social media is not to present you with the bigger picture, but rather to present you with a version of the truth that you want to see. Now, this may be a flaw within social media. However, the fundamental issue is that you are more accustomed to and in favor of viewing content that feels more familiar to you. This revealed to me a bigger aspect of human nature as a whole. How the default lens built into our minds continues to affect the way we think, even without us even being aware of it. How we continue to view different perspectives based on our previous perspectives and thoughts. How we continue to shape new viewpoints that we encounter to match the one that we already have. I mean, what is the point of looking through different lenses if we force ourselves into the same convenient interpretation only because it is easier for our eyes and our minds to relate to? When we look through another lens into a completely unknown story, I firmly believe that the greatest barrier that we face is no longer a lack of perspectives, but is instead the narrative in which we have been born into, brought up in, and how we are so unaware of how it shapes the way we think. I believe that in order to combat this invisible barrier, we need to start by understanding lenses that make us feel uncomfortable, that challenge us to form new interpretations, and are not put into place to just feed into your current narrative. We should stop our enjoyment of stories that make us feel satisfied and begin our wonder on stories that do not make sense to us. They say that the first step to a greater understanding is opening your mind up to the world. However, I believe that the first step is opening your mind up to yourself. Because true interpretation does not start outwards. It starts inwards, within your mind, your perspective. It starts in the lens built into you before you embark your eyes through another one. Thank you.